All right, guys, here we are in this group. Now, if you're on my email list, you already know that what we're going to be talking about today, and you know why you're here. If you're not on my email list, you should get on that list so that you don't miss any of these announcements. I am going to do my best to pre-schedule the lives, like what we're about to do, ahead of time so that you guys can pre-register and everything else. But we already have master classes coming up. We got interviews going on. We got a lot going on in this group. So on the list, you'll get all the important announcements. And if you want to be on that list, just shoot me a message. Now, what are we here to talk about? We are here to talk about being clear without any kind of constriction, right? So there might be a reason if you just take a sec. Think about your day, think about your life, think about how you figure out how to function and how to get yourself moving and how to know what to do. And if you're overwhelmed or stressed out or at all unclear or wanting more from your life, wanting more from what you do, there might be a reason why. You might also have a bunch of ideas and jump from list to list. They might just move around and you really don't have a clear sense of how they're all organized. A lot of times they'll end up in just a pile and you never touch them. I know so many people with just tables full of stuff. Someday, later, maybe, who knows, right? We don't have, till now, an effective way to manage all of that. So in this session, I call this Coach with Christopher. We're going to go through actual coaching. If you guys are tuned in live, there's an opportunity to pull somebody in at the end, and we'll do some live coaching here to talk about things that have, for my clients, ended arguments, stopped addictions, and helped them pick up long-standing hobbies that they have left on the table because they just couldn't stomach or couldn't deal with taking more on. So I want to know, what brought you guys to this call? Did you just click the notification in Facebook or on YouTube and say, hey, I want to be in this call? Or did you get the email? Did you join? What did you want to feel a little more hope in your life, right? So what is it that really brought you here today? I want to know. Tell me in the comments. I can see the comments while I'm live, and I am absolutely going to be acknowledging them. And if you ask a really good question, I'll even put it up on the screen. So I want to know, what is it that brought you here? Now, I want to also know, would you rather have this be a live Zoom call that you guys can join, which requires you to show up on time and join a call? Or do you like this live broadcast like this? So put a hashtag Zoom in the comments if you want to join a Zoom, or put hashtag broadcast if you like this live broadcast. That'll tell me how to shift things around, make it easier for everybody. Now, as I said, today we are talking about asking the right question, and we're going to go through this in a couple of ways. So the first is we're going to talk about why it's important, right? Why is asking the right question even something that's important? We're going to talk about the common problems that come up in trying to ask the right question. What is it that stops you? What is it that blocks you? What is it that makes it work or doesn't? We're going to talk about how to fix it. We're going to talk about the proven and promised framework. If you guys got the emails, you know about this promise that I've made. And we're actually going to answer the question, what makes a good question? One that you can actually work from, one that you can actually take action from. And I'm going to tell you how to get a live demo of the software that will help you not only ask the right question, but have the right answer. In order to qualify for that demo, though, I need your engagement. So let me know, as I said, in the comments, let me know why you're here. First, I want to tell you guys about why asking the right question is so critically important. This might seem like something that's really not that valuable because you've got all these lists, you've got all this stuff to do, but it's really, think about this. It's the difference between whether or not your car even leaves the driveway. If you don't take it out of park, if you haven't asked, is the car in park rather than am I in the car, you don't leave the driveway. It's also a question of whether or not it leaves the driveway with you in it. Right? That might seem kind of ridiculous, but people do this all the time. It's the difference between whether or not you crash into the car in front of you or not. And we've been trained by learning how to drive to ask the right questions to ourselves. Hey, is there enough space? Am I ready to drive? Is everything all set? Like, even when I get in the car, I still check my seatbelt, check all my stuff, right? we're asking ourselves the right question. And that's what training helps you do. But I'm not going to put you through some gauntlet of training to make this happen. So this might sound ridiculous. This might sound like, yeah, who would drive away with, not being in their car? But honestly, several times a day, at least a dozen, at least, I'm talking to people and who experience so much unnecessary stress because they've destroyed that metaphorical car. They had it leave the driveway without them in it. They crashed into a tree, and they just accept that loss as part of their life. So my reason for being here today has nothing to do with driving cars and asking questions, and has everything to do with making sure that you guys live the best possible life that you can. So if this sounds like you, if you have any of this stress going on, or if you have any of this sort of frustration, put "that's me" in the chat so I know who you are and I can help you directly at the end of this call. Now, the problem with not asking the right question is that we're losing out on 36 times by the math more of our potential because we're holding ourselves back. We're too focused on what really doesn't matter or what's too in the weeds, and we're not focused on what really matters to us personally. And if you waste all kinds of time and energy and maybe even money doing things that don't matter, you're ultimately wasting your life. So I don't want you to waste your life. That's why I'm here. I don't want you to waste your life. So again, if you've had that feeling where it feels like you're wasting your life, where it feels like you need to do something different, put "that's me" in the chat. And you have an opportunity at the end of this call to get some live coaching from me using the tools that my clients have used to completely transform their lives. So let's now talk about what really is going on here. What are the problems with the wrong question? How does the wrong question even come about? Well, the first way is shifting context, right? What do I mean by that? Well, context are the constraints and conditions that we even have a question about, the constraints and conditions that are even related to the problem we're trying to solve. And as the thing is our minds, like, it's total side tangent, but have you guys ever read Psycho-Cybernetics? It's a really popular book. It came out in the 50s. If you've read it, let me know. In that book, it's probably one of the best keystone foundational personal development books, because what it does is it talks about the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is thinking for us all the time. It's choosing for us all of the time, to the point where, and I'm sure you guys have heard of this iceberg concept, to the point where 20% of what we do is only 20% is conscious, right? The rest is subconscious. So our subconscious mind is thinking for us all the time. And when we ask a question or when we try to solve a problem, that subconscious mind is setting out to actually solve that problem. And if we aren't effectively creating a space for that problem to be solved, we are going to be completely stressed out and completely overwhelmed. So if you're already stressed, it's just going to be worse if you keep changing those constraints and conditions, and you actually won't be able to do any of these practices effectively as a result. It's kind of like being drunk. In fact, science has proven that with just a little bit of constraint on our subconscious, we're effectively drunk. So the solution to that, right, to solve this problem of shifting context, where we are, and I'm going to give some specific examples in a second, but where we're maybe asking one question, then rephrasing it, or we're saying to ourselves, hey, why does this happen? But we're not giving enough information, and then we give information, or the conditions around the thing change. Like, hey, how do I manage my money? Is a common question I get. Well, however you manage your money is going to change if you have a new demand on you. So that's an example of shifting context. And there's going to be more that are coming of these examples. But if that's happening, it's stressful, it confuses your subconscious mind, and it makes it difficult for you to do anything, right? So that's the first part. That's the first problem, is shifting context. And if you have shifting context, if this has ever happened to you where you go to take action on something and all the situation changes and now you have to act in some other way, put "that's me" in the chat. I want to know who you are, again, so I can do some live coaching with you if you are willing. So there's a couple of other reasons why we ask the wrong question and create all this stress. Another one of those reasons is that there's too many unrelated parts. There's too many unrelated pieces to that shifting context. So it's just another level deeper. If we're asking ourselves, if we're drawing a metaphorical circle and saying, I want everything inside of that circle, brain, give me the answer, and we change where that circle is, that's stressful enough. But if we have, they call it red herrings in psychology, if we have these things that are thrown into that circle that don't match or that aren't related at all, we're wasting time, we're wasting energy, and we're ignoring the most important parts. This is like saying to us, to ourselves, using that car metaphor, this is like saying, hey, I need to have a sandwich before I put on my seatbelt. And that's just a rule that you follow. And, all your friends get in the car with you and you're like, wait, I got to make a sandwich before I go put on my seatbelt. Like, it's not related at all. And it's like ridiculous, right? Well, that's what's happening in our mind. We're creating a situation where we're throwing too much distraction into the mix. And if that happens, it creates stress. So we need to be able to classify things on the spot in order to solve that. I'm going to tell you how to do that in this call. And ultimately what that will do is it will allow you to only focus on what's relevant so that you can be able to take action like clockwork without even thinking about it. So if you've ever had that situation where it seems like you've got a clear path, you've got a clear decision, you've asked the right question, you're on the right track, and something unexpected happens, put "that's me" in the chat and I will, or in the comments, and I will, I'll work with you if you want me to, on solving this problem. Now, the other issue is that too many details, right? So kind of converse to, hey, we need to get stuff out of the mix. We might have a bunch of relevant stuff, but it just might be too many details. Like, imagine if you had to read the whole driver's manual before you even got in the car every single time. It causes you to be unable to hold anything else in your mind, which is why so many people resist new ideas and new suggestions when they're already stressed out because they've asked the wrong question, because they have the wrong context, because they have too many unrelated parts. And that immediately puts us at a disadvantage if we have to read that metaphorical driver's manual every time. In real life, what that might look like is having a ton of, like, I'm writing a book right now, and on a whiteboard off to the side, I have a ton of sticky notes. And I know how to manage that. But for a lot of people, if I were to hand that off and say, hey, go write a book with all this, whoa, where do I even start, right? If somebody's talking and they don't stop talking and there's all this information, it's like, what do I even address first? It creates more confusion and more stress. So what we need to be able to do is know exactly what's most to least relevant so that we know where to put our energy and we know what's worth our time. Have you ever had this problem? If you have ever had too many details, and if you're overwhelmed by that at times, put "that's me" in the chat. Now, solutions that are hard to remember are the fourth and final problem before I get into exactly what we're going to do about this. And what do I mean by that? I mean, let's say you've done everything right? You've asked the right question, you've got the right context, you've got all the right pieces, you've got no red herrings, everything's working, everything's perfect. You come up with an answer. How many times has this happened? And like 3 days later, you're like, oh, I did that already? Like, it's almost as if you completely forgot that you came up with the solution, or that you completely forgot what the solution even was. That is what I mean by solutions that are hard to remember. We need to be able to remember all of our decisions. Otherwise, it's a lot like having to recalibrate the GPS at every turn, even if you're on the right track. It wastes time, it wastes energy, and it takes away from our potential and wastes our life. In this case, not only is it annoying to hear recalibrating every 5 seconds, but it's a total and absolute waste of energy. And so we need to find a way to come up with the solution and anchor that solution reliably, not in a way that we think is clear, not in a way that we think will work, but actually anchor it reliably so that we can come back to it and we can be clear on all those parts and all the question and everything else. So if you've ever had a situation, I want to know, where you couldn't quite remember that you even solved a problem, or you got like halfway there and things fell apart, or maybe you solved a problem but couldn't remember it later, but you knew you solved it. put that to me in the chat, because I'm going to give you some solutions to these things right now. And those solutions and that framework that I promised you guys is going to be the answer. We just need to use it correctly. So how have I done this? Like, let me tell you a bit about how this has worked in other cases. So I coach people on making better decisions and helping them be more in line with the future that they want without all of this drag and all of this cost, right? And so what I found is that the people who are most successful with this, even those who aren't really, as long as they're consistent with the practice, the people who are consistent with the practice and the tools I'm about to give you take less than 1 month to be able to have a complete experience, to be able to have a complete change in their life and be able to have decisions and have solutions and have answers to questions they never even thought they could address. This framework has solved addiction problems. It has solved spending problems. It has solved relationship problems, because if you ask somebody the right question at the right time and in the right order, they have their answer. You lead them to their answer. A lot like if you're in a car and you're driving and you kind of are driving on automatic and you know where you're going. Hearing recalibrate every 5 seconds might frustrate you and get you lost. Not being in the car certainly won't get you to where you're going, but there comes a point where it's completely automatic. So let's talk about how we fix this, because I want you to understand that this is part of a bigger picture, part of a bigger framework that allows you to be able to cut right through all the noise. So obviously the first part is clear questions. Why you're doing what you're doing. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Right? If you don't know why, if you don't know your bigger why, in other words, that context, I mean, you're driving aimlessly. You're not going anywhere. And that's why a lot of people burn themselves out, is they don't have a clear enough why. Now, that begs the question, all right, so once we know why, what do we do? How do we create those relevant things? Well, we're going to have to brainstorm some of that, right? We're going to have to use our creativity to give us the answers that we're looking for. Getting all those details within that context that's all relevant and knowing how to manage them is critical. If we don't know how to manage all the pieces that we come up with or that are given to us within that container, we have absolutely no idea where to turn if we're driving, right? We don't know the roads. If the GPS says turn left in 500 feet and you don't see the road, or you're not, aware that there might be construction there, right? You're going to cause a problem for yourself. That's a bad example, but let's go to a to-do list. If you have a goal of making a website, but you never think to change the demo text, and at the last minute when you're ready to go live, you realize that you haven't. Again, ridiculous example, but this ridiculous example is used, and I see it all of the time in situations when I'm interacting with people. There's somebody who just commented, always me, to the previous comments. And that I know who that person is. And of course it is, because we don't know what we're not missing out on. Like I said before, people are having this experience and just assuming that the car should, drive away or crash. I mean, the car metaphor breaks down a little bit there, but people are having an experience in life, not knowing that they're not clear, and just taking the cost for granted and then wanting something more. This is how you get more, right? Clear questions, brainstorm. But here's the important part. In order to make this all work, we need to structure those pieces. Now, some people do this just naturally. Some people will naturally organize, but we need to structure those pieces and consolidate them in a way that's more powerful than leaving them separate. It's kind of like IKEA furniture, right? You can go buy the box of furniture and bring it home and say, hey, I got a couch or I got a desk. But if you leave it in the box and you never put it together in a way that makes sense, or if you put it together in the wrong way, it's just all going to fall apart and you're wasting time and energy. Again, we need to do this in an effective way, which is why there needs to be some guidance involved. So unifying is the last step. So we have clear questions, we we have brainstorming, we have structure, and now we're talking about unifying, anchoring, just like that problem we talked about earlier. We need to remember the whole process that we went through in an effective and simple way. If we can't do that, we might as well have not done the process. And that's what a lot of people choose to do. So if you tell yourself, I might as well not start, or it's better if I do nothing, you're likely in this camp of having to redo things or stop doing things or have this irrelevant stuff enter your sphere while you're focused. And you've just given up because you don't have a good way to anchor what you're doing. So it is critically important. A couple of tips about this framework, about those four components. It is critically important that we do those in that order. If we brainstorm after we create, again, it's wasted effort. If we brainstorm without a question, it's kind of, you're going to be more anxious, right? You're not ultimately directing your thoughts. You don't know what's relevant. And your mind, your subconscious mind, is panicking while you're trying to determine what's relevant and what isn't. If you're trying to add structure to things that aren't related or aren't within a certain context or not trying to solve a particular problem, you're going to spend a lot of time being unintentional. There's a term for doing that. It's called art, right? Unintentionally creating. You might want to paint a house, but how you get there is totally up for grabs. The clearest you have is a house, maybe if you're lucky. Most artists like to just go with the flow, but art doesn't help you solve problems, and we're here to solve problems. So you can be an artist, but know that you're not going to solve a problem or help your life or get further ahead without this framework when you go and try to do that in your life. That's not to say don't be an artist. That's to say that when you're being an artist, be an artist. When you're trying to solve a problem, when you're trying to get clear on a question, here's what you do, right? So you have to do these things in order. You have to prioritize them in that sequence. And I know that this may seem like a lot. Like we just talked about a lot of problems, and I just gave these examples of questions and brainstorming and structure and unifying. And it may seem like a lot, but the truth is it gets exponentially easier. You have exponentially more bandwidth. You have way more capacity, and you have way more capability if you start where it matters most, which is asking the right question, which is why we're here today. So we're going to focus on the question today. I want you guys to tell me, after hearing all of this, what's a really important question that you've been wanting the answer to? What's a really important thing in your life that you're trying to fix? Something you've either tried to figure out or keep changing your mind about, or keep getting stopped while you do, or keep having new stuff be added to the pile. Tell me in the chat or in the comments what that is, because I'm yawning unexpectedly. See that? Luckily I can stay focused. I am going to tell you, I'll critique these questions if you guys put them in here. But in order for you to critique your own questions, I want to tell you what makes a good question. So that very first step, ask a good question, create good context. How do we actually do that? I'm going to tell you a little bit about that here. And then I'm going to tell you how you can master the art of asking the right question, and even give you the potential to do this using one of our tools that up to now have only been client access only. So what's a good question? There are 4 parts to a good question. One is that it speaks to an outcome. So what's the result? If we assume everything else goes right, what's the result? We go to the theater. We go to the burger joint, using the car metaphor. Maybe we write a book that's about a thing, right? We'll get to that in a little bit. Like, how do we add those nuances, right? What's the outcome? What is going to be at the end of the process? A good question also alludes to an emotion. Now, that's not to say you can't ask a question without these things, just to be clear, but a good question, one that will elicit a proper context, alludes to an emotion. So how will you feel along the way? And I'll give you guys some examples. So just using those 2 points, I might ask a question to an author of, what is the, an author is a bad example. I might ask a question to somebody who comes to me as a client, right? Who's having, let's say they're really overwhelmed and they have just too much to do. I would say, well, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? Assuming everything works, how do you want to feel? Okay. Actually, really good feedback there, I see in the comments. I'm going to put that on the screen in a minute. How do you want to feel? All right. Well, we know how we want to feel. So Now, what, you got too many things to do. Well, give me one thing that would make you feel that way about all this stuff. Or maybe it's not even about all this stuff. Just let's say you get all these things done. What's the outcome of that? Is it a clean desk that you're after? Is it having nothing to do? Is it having an abundance of space? Like, what is your, sometimes people refer to this as a goal, but I hate the word goal because it makes people get in their heads about it, right? But everybody wants something, and that's why we feel overwhelmed if we don't have it, or why we feel frustrated, or why we feel anger, or why we have an existential crisis. So what's the result that you're seeking? That's really important. You're not doing something just to do it. There's a reason why. And how will you feel when you get there? You can vacillate between these. These aren't steps. These are just components of what makes a good function. Or a good function, a good question. They're functions of ways to speak that give you the good question on the other side. So we could ask, how do you want to feel once that's done? Or we could say, why do you want to feel that way? There's different reasons when we would ask different questions. I'm not going to get into that nuance here, but I will most certainly tell you that you can use any of these techniques, the two I just gave you and the two I'm about to give you, to refine. And the truth is, if you can go through all four of these points, again, two I've given you and two I'm about to, if you can go through all four of these points and say, yeah, that's there, you've got yourself a good question. So it speaks to an outcome, it alludes to an emotion, and it signals a value that you have. Some call this virtue signaling. That's important because the value that you have is a quality of the why. So a clean desk, a abundance of ideas, right? That qualitative measure. You could think of this, if you're grammatically inclined, you could think of this like an adjective. They should also originate from you. So I'm going to give you some examples of some of my intentions, and then I'll work with somebody who just put one of theirs here in the live call. And we'll work to massage that out. The reason why these intentions need to originate from you is because they will have way more meaning if they do, and they will have way more meaning if they do, and they will ultimately be easier for your subconscious to work on. If you take any of these examples that I am about to give you, and you try to ask yourself these questions, it hits differently. It's completely different. And it's important to remember that if we're using anybody else's question, just because it sounds good and it sounds like it's, that sounds nice, I want that, it has no personal value, and it's another distraction for you, to sum that up. So if we aren't personally invested, our subconscious mind won't do the work. Now, so we just talked about what makes a good question. We just talked about examples, or we're about to talk about examples. And I am going to invite somebody here onto the live with us in just a moment, who is we're going to go through and we're going to facilitate a good question here on the call. This is the person who said this: I'm having too many existential crises to figure out any good questions. We're going to have a good question by the end. And then you guys are all going to know exactly how we can not only have a good question, but what we can do to find an answer. So here are some examples for me. Here are some questions that I've given myself so you guys can see exactly what I mean by checking off all four of these boxes. What is most important to get done for me to feel open and have fun in the next week? Now, let's go through the parts. It speaks to an outcome. I want to have fun. I want to feel open, right? They can intermingle too. That's the outcome, right? What's the emotion? Well, fun and open. What's the value? Important. What's most important for me to feel this way, right? This I value doing what's important. They should also originate from me. Well, that's a question I asked myself, so it originates from me. Here's another one. What things bring me down and keep me from showing up fully? Okay, it speaks to an outcome. showing up. It speaks to an emotion, right? Bringing me down. I'm talking about what brings me down, so that if I'm not brought down, I can show up fully. So what brings me down? And it speaks to a value, the fully, the adjective. How can I show up fully? Right? That's a value. I want to show up fully. I don't just want to halfway show up. So it signals this idea that if I'm doing something, I'm fully invested into something I'm doing. It also obviously originates from me. So lastly, I'll give one more example. And if this person can join on in, we'll work with her. I think we may be having a little tech trouble. I'm not quite sure yet. But third example is, what's more important to have first in order to establish safety and security? That's a question I've asked myself just this week. What's most important to have? I could say to buy as well first, in order to establish safety and security. Okay, so it speaks to an outcome, something I have. It speaks to an emotion, safety and security, and a value. What's a value that I'm signaling here? The prioritization of safety and security first. So there can be some nuance to this, which is why I'm asking people to put their comments in and waiting for somebody here to join the call. I'm not going to wait too much longer. I'll move on, and I will tell you guys that if we can't ask ourselves the right question, we're ultimately wasting time and our energy. Now, in each one of those examples, what's the most important thing to get done to feel open and fun in the next week? What are things that bring me down and keep me from showing up fully? What is more important to have first to establish safety and security? Notice, I'm not just saying what's more important. That's super general. So I'm seeking this outcome, establishing safety and security. Breaking that down further, I'm seeking an emotion from that. And going even further, I'm talking about the type of emotion. So each one of those statements is like a two-part statement. It's like the importance or qualitative thing, and it's the outcome. And then we just massage that to get more and more clear. So this isn't a hard and fast thing. You can feel how me saying what's more important is a different question than what's more important to feel open and have fun in the next week. You can see that outcome and feel the way I'm going to feel in that. What things bring me down and keep me from showing up fully? There's a feeling there. We want to craft our words such that we have that same experience. All right, so I think we're having a little bit of trouble getting that guest on here to work out their question. But here's what I'll say. This week, so for the next, perfect timing. Here she is. Perfect timing-ish. I am waiting for her to be ready. It looks like I'm looking at a wall right now. But here's what I'll say, and you'll see me do this live with this person. So this week, I'm offering no-cost demonstrations of this system to 5 people, only 5, who are serious about making better decisions in their life and who want to see the impact it's causing not to make those decisions. This demo is one of the signature systems I've created, and we call it Decisions on Demand. In the demo, I'm going to clarify a question just like you're about to see me do here. We're going to brainstorm some aspects of it. We'll prioritize those in a way that's over 90% effective. Everybody I've taken through this process has said that they're both relieved and shocked by those results. And 99% say that they would trust this tool more than whatever they're doing now. So in order to qualify for that offer, for that call, if you want to receive a live demo of that tool where you can ask the right question, I can help you get that clarity that I'm about to do here, and we can answer that question. Obviously, you need to show up for the call. You'd be surprised, over 30% of people cancel or reschedule. And this can't be some emergency question. It can't be like which payday lender you're going to pay or how am I going to keep my lights from getting shut off. Those emergency situations create extreme constriction, and it's easy to lose yourself in the weeds. And You need to be willing to let go of everything you've ever learned about prioritization, because we're going to do this in a much different way. So if you're interested in that, put I'm in the comments right now, and I will follow up with you separately. I'll let you know. I'll ask you a couple questions, and we'll make sure that it's a good fit, and then we'll move forward and book the call. But right now, I have Rebecca here, who I think can hear me and see me. And yeah, she can. And so I'm going to bring her into the call here, and we're going to talk about her comment that she left. She said, I'm having too many existential crises to figure out any good questions. So you're going to see how we follow these guidelines of an outcome, an emotion, and some kind of value to get her to a point where she can ask a clear question that will then elicit a good answer. So let's bring Rebecca in. Hey, Rebecca, how are you?
Oh, just, I don't know, fine, pretty much.
Good. So let's work this out, because you have a pretty, that was a pretty intense comment, and I want people to see how we can clarify that. So I need a little bit more detail, whatever you're willing to share, and then we'll hone in on an outcome, an emotion, and a value that we can use.
Well, my husband's, we're getting ready for a deployment here pretty soon, and I have three pretty young kids and we homeschool and stuff, and they're also neurodivergent, so it's a lot.
So that's intense, yeah.
Yeah, and then I've been having some health stuff going on recently, and was that it? I don't know. There's some
Seems
other
like
stuff.
a good amount. We can work with
Yeah.
that. So I noticed that as you were joining, you might have dropped off the live. So I'm just gonna restate, whatever. The three parts we're after. We're after an emotion, an outcome, and some kind of quality or value for that outcome. So the easiest thing that I think we can start with here is an emotion. The easiest thing I think we can start with right now is an emotion. So, you've got all this stuff going on. It's a lot. We've acknowledged that. How in an ideal scenario, let's say this all clears up. Let's say you can figure everything out, and you're not, well, whether you are stressed or not about it, how would you feel on the other side? Once you've got the clarity about your husband, the security about him, the kids at school, homeschooled, all that's worked out, how do you want to feel?
Probably more peaceful.
Peaceful. And if you feel peaceful, what is that going to do for you in your life?
Maybe I won't have to think so much all the time.
That almost seems unrealistic to you, right?
Right? But some of the,
Well,
I grew up in a cult, so I've been having a lot of things going on with that lately. So,
right. So that's that at the beginning of this, when we were talking about all the aspects and all the relevant aspects. Let's get to the question, and then all of that stuff that's coming up are now things that would you can work with in service of this question, right? So you'd feel more peaceful. You'd be able to think more clearly. Are there any other benefits or parts of what you'd experience if you had more peace in your life?
I guess when I have to think so much about things, I have less room to think about other things that need to be done. So, like getting ready for this deployment.
So it's like playing thought roulette or musical thoughts. There's only so much room.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to feel peaceful. You want to focus on what really matters to you. And why is that important to you? Like, why is it important to you to focus on the deployment rather than all the stress?
Because I'm the only parent that's available for my kids. So
good.
That's kind of a
so
big deal.
Yeah, and we've talked before. So this idea of being able to create a context to work within. So here's what I would say. Tell me how this lands in your body, right? Which What is most important for me to focus on so that I can feel at peace and be fully present with my family? I'm not looking for an answer. I'm looking for just, does that feel like it hits?
Like makes things more stressful or less stressful?
You could go either way. So you've got a pile of stuff rattling around in your head, things to focus on, aspects of them. You've got all these interrelated parts. And there needs to be some direction and some guidance for it. So that's the question. It could be, which of these do I need to eliminate in order to feel more peace and be able to fully show up? Or it could be, which of these do I need to pay more attention to? Either one. Clearly there's kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I told you need to stay out right now.
We're almost done. Right now. I just want you to get this question so you can work with it.
Yes.
Just want you to get this question so you can work with it. So it could be either one, either eliminate or take on. But really the key here is the outcome, the emotion, and the reason why. And what we've established is you want to feel peaceful, want to have space in your head, and you want to fully show up for your family.
Yeah.
Does that seem like it fits?
Yeah.
So now you have a context with which to judge. That's the whole point of a context, is you're using it to judge all the parts. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have a question. I'm not going to go through the whole process here on the call. I think you heard while you were in the green room that I'm actually doing a demo of Decisions on Demand, which I think we've done before, you and I, in that same context. So I'll follow up with you separately with a separate link. If you want to throw that question in there and see what you get, you can use it. You can use that particular link every day. For anybody watching, that offer is available to you too. So I'm taking 5 people this week through this demonstration with a facilitation, just like we did. You can see it doesn't take long to get to a question, but once we have the right question, we have a way to assess everything. Has this been helpful, Rebecca?
Yeah, kind of.
Good.
That helps.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to do. There's always more work to do, but it does help. So remember, we have to have a question, and then we go through the rest of the process. All right. Thanks for hopping on, and thanks for being willing to be vulnerable here in front of the group. And I appreciate you. We'll be in touch.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. All right, guys. For the rest of you still watching, if you want an experience like that where you can get clarity on what question to ask and how to then take that and actually get the answer, right? So Rebecca only got the question. I want to show you how easy that could be if you do it right. But she also has more questions, and she needs the answer now to what to put her energy into, what to focus on, what to get rid of, all these things. I'm willing to sit down and do that with you. So 5 people, put I'm in the comments if you're interested in being one of those 5. Spots will fill up quickly. I have a backlog of people who are interested in getting this replay. So even if you're watching right now and you don't think that you'll make it, still hop in the comments. And I will see you guys, in the comments and in the group. So for now, take care and have a good rest of your day, whatever day it is, if you're watching this in the replay. All right, everybody, take care.